Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Christian Hanna Horror here. So, when this video goes live, will be a day or so afterwards, but Pet Sematary just had a birthday. I was thinking about it. I can't recall if I've ever devoted a video just strictly to Pet Sematary. So, I thought it would be nice to kind of talk about this film for a minute, kind of retrospect it. It's a very interesting film for me because it's a film that I kind of reevaluated a couple times after seeing it. And I hold it in really high regard, as I'm sure a lot of people do. When I first saw Pet Sematary, I thought it was a good movie, and I was just like, it's not my favorite Stephen King film. I liked it better, or I like The Shining better, or I like this better than that, but it wasn't bad. But, when I would hear people talk about it mostly, people would say, oh, and especially a lot of parents, they talk about how harrowing that film could be to them with certain scenes, obviously, and, it's a movie that I see it differently the older I get, and talking to people about the film. It's a movie I always go back when I hear people talk about it because they talk about it in very genuine high regard. Now, my initial thought when I would see Pet Sematary was everybody was great, but that girl couldn't act. That was always the thing in the back of my head. And, I still don't necessarily not feel that way. But, it's interesting. I never really hear people complain about her acting in the film, and I always thought she was just kind of bad. And I'm really not sure how to feel about her in that movie still. It's one of those things where I don't bring it up much because I seldomly hear people ever agree with me on that. But there are so many things about that movie that I have appreciated as I've gotten older that really hit home for me and probably put this movie in the top 5 for me in terms of Stephen King movies. I mean, that subject matter is so gripping, and it's so, first of all, I love the small town settings in horror movies, so when you've got the family moving into the house, and they're settling in, and they've got you establish very quickly with that road with those massive 18-wheelers coming down the highway, or semis, as they call them in other parts of the world. Down in the South, we call them 18-wheelers, all right? We call them 18-wheelers down there, or some people just call them trucks. But you establish pretty quickly that these big trucks come up and down this road, and it's dangerous. And it feels very homey to me. It's something I can relate to because there's a lot of those around where I live. I see them all the time, wherever I go. And I grasp onto that element as simple and silly as it is. Like, I really grasp onto that element because growing up, I was always, my parents, everybody, like, don't be careful. Those trucks, they can't stop like you think they can. They'll crush you. They'll kill you. So I always liked that element growing up. And then, even from a younger standpoint, when I would watch this film, I was probably 14, 15 when I first saw it. I always felt like I related to the dad. I don't know what it was necessarily. I just instantly I gravitated toward his character. And I always felt like he was the one that the movie's putting you behind the eyes of in the film anyway. I just always thought he was a great lead for this movie. I felt his decisions. I felt the pain and agony he'd have to go through. And I mean, his acting is so good in this movie. That horrible scene where Gage gets run over, that gripping moment of him just losing it, And I know when a lot of people watch this movie, if you want to be critical about it, it's like, would you really just, like, not pay attention to your little kid out on a field like that? But, things happen in life. Like, these accidents happen, and it's not like the parents want it to. It's just very unfortunate. So I kind of forgive some of that, that kind of stuff when you're watching a movie because you watch and you're like, oh, there's no way you would just take your eyes off the kid. But that scene, it's so gripping, his performance. And then, something happened to me where there was this documentary that came out. And when I watched this documentary, I was like, I had such a profound respect for this movie and really grasping how gripping some of the stuff was. This is a documentary you all need to see. It's called Unearthed and Untold. Now, this is from Synapse Films. It was on Shudder at one time, but I don't know if it's still on there. But look it up. Unearthed and Untold: The Path to Pet Sematary. Mary Lambert is a trailblazer. That woman, she pushed for that funeral scene in that film. And when you watch that movie, it's uncomfortable. I mean, it's genuinely one of the most uncomfortable scenes. I've watched Serbian film. I've watched, you name it. I've watched some bizarre stuff with insane subject matter, some of the most insane subject matter ever. But in that movie, Pet Sematary, that funeral scene literally just makes you feel bad. And then when the father-in-law, is like, why weren't you watching him? And he punches him. And then the casket opens up. It's just, oh, God. And Mary pushed for that because she said, I want this film to really just grab the people and make them go through ups and downs. I don't want this to just be another 80s, movie. And I have so much love and respect for Mary Lambert because she really is a trailblazer who made that movie more than just an 80s horror film. Not that there's anything wrong with 80s horror films, but she really pushed it to be this everlasting thing. And like I said, if you haven't seen Unearthed and Untold, this is probably one of the best documentaries on a film I've ever seen. I mean, very truthful, in-depth. It was not an easy road to make this film. No studio wanted to touch it because they thought that the Stephen King adaptations were long done. Nobody cared about seeing this stuff, but Mary pushed for this. So, I mean, I really have so much love and respect for Pet Sematary, and I love, obviously, the dark angel of the film, the jogger, who, people... At first, you think he's this horrifying character, but then you learn about he's trying to help the dad and warn him. And, it's only if only in life we could have something like that happen to us. Maybe not that grotesque, but an angel, so to speak, that could tell us and guide us on what not to do, It's gripping stuff. It really is. It's a good movie. It's a great movie. The soundtrack is amazing on it. I've got it on vinyl, and I love listening to that sometimes, and those voices and stuff. Great. If you're a patron, you'll just see that I covered the Pet Sematary Ramon song. It's on the Patreon right now for $1 a month. You can go hear that. So, I mean, there's so many elements about this film that make it work. And, Pet Sematary is a film I loved to collect. I went out of my way to get the Laserdisc of the film, so I've got Pet Sematary on Laserdisc. And then I got it on DVD, which is somewhere. I couldn't find it. Then I got this Blu-ray of it with the cat on the front, Church the Cat. And then I couldn't wait to get the 4K of it, and this is one of the best looking 4Ks ever. Pet Sematary is a pretty heralded, however you say that word, it's heralded very high because Scream Factory couldn't get it. Paramount themselves put out the 4K. They were like, no. We know the value of this film. We're not gonna let it out to another third party company. We're gonna put this out ourselves. So that, I think that kind of says something about Pet Sematary. But it really is a film that has a lot of layers to it, and it's saying and doing a lot that I didn't really appreciate till talking to people about the film and realizing what's going on and understanding what Mary was trying to show and portray in this film. I just have so much love and respect for it now, and I do think it's an absolute classic film. So if it's been a while since you've checked the movie out, I want to watch it right now. I mean, because Pet Sematary, man, it's a gripping movie, but it's odd. It's one of those movies that it's always deeper than you remember when you watch it. For me, it's like that. Every time I put it on, it's a little bit deeper than I remembered it being. And I'm always like, God, man, wow. But you can't help but visit it often. And, the last thing I'll say is obviously Zelda ruined people's sleep for days. When I talked to people that were there when the movie came out and saw it in theaters, and growing up, they all say Zelda freaked them out. Zelda never really freaked me out, but I can see it. That creepy look, But yeah, this movie's saying and doing a lot that I didn't really realize till talking to people and realizing and really listening to the subject matter. There's talk of the afterlife in here. There's talk of all kinds of stuff. It's a life and death movie, but it's not peripheral. I mean, it really is in your face what Mary is, getting through with this movie and what the story was about. So I love Pet Sematary, guys. I highly recommend getting this documentary called Unearthed and Untold. It's gripping. Great stuff, and it really gave me a profound appreciation for this film that I would have gotten there, but that really kicked it into gear for me to get that genuine appreciation for that film. So I highly recommend checking out that documentary, guys. You won't regret it. That's from Synapse Films. So, happy birthday, Pet Sematary. No one's done it quite like you from what I've seen yet. I'm hoping that that'll change one day, but this film is everlasting for a reason, and I'm sure generations to come will be enjoying that film that Mary Lambert directed, and a great cast, and Judd, who I love in that movie. So, yeah, guys, what do you think about Pet Sematary? Did your opinion change with that film over the years like mine did, or did you see it from the start? I'm not always the most observant person. Sometimes I need to be knocked over the head a couple times to realize what's going on. But, yeah, Pet Sematary, a film I love to buy, quite frankly. I've got all kinds of releases for it, so great film. And happy birthday, Pet Sematary.